Hello, this is Mike Regan, and I'm delighted to welcome you to another on-the-record Zoom interview with our friend Bryan Boudreaux. And Bryan, up until recently, was the Senior VP of Distribution for Walmart, and since then is now the head of Lagniappe Advisors. And I'd like to welcome you, Bryan, to this on-the-record interview. We're going to have an opportunity to share with people a little bit about your background and some of the exciting things that you're doing on behalf of your clients there. So welcome.
Thank you, Mike. Very, very nice to be with you today on the record.
Great. Hey, Bryan, give us a little bit of background. As I mentioned, you were with Walmart for a lot of years. You served in the military before that. So catch us up on some of the things that you were doing at Walmart and some of the great stuff that has been happening.
You bet, Mike. So started my career out of college in the military, in the Army. Spent 5 years there on active duty and left the Army and went to work for a trucking company, family-owned trucking company. Spent a couple of years there. And then spent the last 21 years at Walmart and Walmart supply chain, and kind of grew up in transportation. So did all kind of roles in Walmart transportation, from dispatching to general manager roles to backhaul roles. And then the last 11 years or so spent in distribution operations. The last role there was head of supply chain for the eastern half of the United States, responsible for grocery distribution, general merchandise distribution, and pharmacy distribution. So obviously lots going on there, but Mike, what I found out in all those years at Walmart is there's always something to improve. And it doesn't matter if you're a world-class operation or an operation like Walmart that's really, really big, or small one facility operation. There's always something that you can work on to get better from an organizational standpoint. And one of the things, Mike, that you've heard of, I know you've heard this term OTIF, on time in full. One of the things that we really worked with at Walmart, both internally and externally with our suppliers, was really improving on-time delivery to the distribution centers and those orders being in full. And that's really something that, kind of came to bear over the last couple of years. And it's one of those components of continuous improvement, if you will, that's sort of embedded in the Walmart DNA.
Bryan, that's really interesting because I've been very active in a lot of different organizations, and one of them in particular, the YPO Manufacturing Excellence Network, we're all focused on lean, and we've got some great programs which help companies understand, what lean's all about, how you incorporate lean into your operations, and obviously when you're focused on lean, one of the things that you really are locked and loaded on, as it were, is eliminating waste. And one of the things that you were mentioning, like with OTIF and some of the other initiatives that Walmart pursued, it's not that it just gets Walmart better, but it gets Walmart suppliers better by having to comply with these programs. And, Bryan, that leads me into, perhaps an area that you can touch on. We were very fortunate to work with Walmart for a lot of years. I like to remind everyone that the guy that signed the Walmart contract with us was a guy named Mike Duke, who went on to be the CEO of Walmart. So I tell everyone, if you want to be the CEO, fight to sign that TranzAct's contract. But having said that, one of the things that I was always fascinated about with Walmart is, is one of your contemporaries, told me, at Walmart we play to win, and a lot of people, see what Walmart's doing, the outstanding results they've had, and what I kind of find interesting, Bryan, is that seemingly sometimes at Walmart, a lot of people there take it for granted. This is just the way you do business, and they may not understand, all the great things that they're doing. So maybe you could share with us, your background in terms of how you achieve that process improvement within Walmart, the continuous improvement, the elimination of waste. What's it like to work like in that kind of environment?
I think it's part of the DNA that I mentioned earlier, Mike. Sam Walton's 3 basic beliefs, and really I think these 3 basic beliefs are a universal trait for all companies, right? But it was respect for the individual, it was service to the customer, and it was striving for excellence. And when you take striving for excellence and deep dive into that, that's really all about continuous improvement. So the Walmart organization is very paranoid, and we as a company, we're always looking to really one up ourselves, to keep an eye on the competition, but always one up ourselves. And benchmarking is a key component of continuous improvement. And you have to really understand what everyone around you is doing to kind of one, stay up with what's going on in the industry, but make sure you're not being lapped, right? I talked to you a couple of weeks ago about change and how the customer is changing, how the customer is changing their expectations. And I was talking to a CEO last night, not a CEO, but a chief supply chain officer last night, a good friend of mine. And his dilemma is, how do I get as fast as Amazon, but still be cost conscious, right? And that's a really big challenge, because Amazon is really upping the game and the customer's expectations are following Amazon. But how do you do that in a profitable manner? So that's a big, big challenge. And one of the things at Walmart, one of the key things that we focused on was keeping processes, keeping operations simple. So a hallmark of mine was walking through a distribution center and asking associates about their job, what obstacles they faced in their job. And so how do we remove those obstacles? How do we keep things simple? And I coined this term Applefy, Mike. So we all are familiar with the iPhones, and how Apple has made the use of applications and technology much easier. So easy today that small kids can pick up phones and work on these iPhones. Well, how do we make processes simple? How do we make our interfaces for our associates simple? And this term Applefy is something that we launched at Walmart. And simply, it's just simplification. How do you simplify the steps out of a process? And how do you simplify the interfaces that associates have? So that's a key component of what we're doing at Walmart.
Bryan, let's take a step back. When I hear the words simple and make it easier and all that kind of stuff, I'm sure there are going to be those people that, like myself, say, yeah, that's easy to say, but it can be extraordinarily complex to implement. So how do I make implementing the simple actually simple to do?
Yeah, it's really a great question. Here's how I relate it. So Walmart's not unlike many other companies. We tend to set a process and then we follow that process for years, maybe even decades. And I think the way I look at simplification is you take that old process and how does it relate today, right? How do we use technology today? Heck, 20 years ago, Mike, we didn't know about iPhones. We didn't know about applications. Today, there are applications, and we've deployed applications, or let me say it like this, Walmart has deployed applications in its business for associates to use smart devices to take steps out of their work. So it's I wouldn't say it's easy to do. What's easy to do is evaluate how old your processes are, how old maybe some of your systems interfaces are, and how maybe somebody external to the organization or how a new person might come in and try to react or interact with those processes or systems. If it's not something they can pick up, in a couple of hours, then I would say the process is too complex.
Yeah, one of the things, Bryan, and that brings up an interesting question about relevancy. One of the questions that I frequently ask companies when I go in and talk to them is what you're doing today relevant for the way you have to conduct business. If it's we see companies that haven't changed their supply chains, are still doing things the way they were doing them 3, 5, 7 years ago. And one of the things I like to remind them, just from a transportation function, your carriers have networks that are significantly different today than they were 3 to 5 years ago. If you're not adapting or taking advantage of those changes, then you run the risk of being lapped. Let me take a step back, though, because one of the things you also mentioned in some of our previous discussions, give me a little bit of a snapshot, a real quick snapshot of the scale of Walmart, so that people understand, when you talk about simple, you weren't living in La La Land. You were dealing with something that was, that had the potential to be very complex.
You bet. So just the distribution centers that I supported in my last role, Mike, there were 50. So we're talking 50 distribution centers, 45 million square feet, over 30,000 associates. So listen, I know all about change. Change is hard for an organization. It's very difficult. And the bigger it is, actually, the harder it is to roll out because you've got more touch points, more people, more processes to change. So I know it's not easy, but it's imperative that we embark on that course of change. And listen, even at Walmart, sometimes you don't get change right the first time, and you have to continue to morph. But that's what the customer's demanding. The customer's demanding that we continue to change. We can continue to give them more service at a faster speed, greater accuracy. I mean, that's what's being demanded of supply chains today. And again, I was reminded of that last night when I was talking to that chief supply chain officer. He said, it's a great challenge. It's fun. It's exciting. But I don't know that I've got the, I don't know that I have the roadmap right now for how I get as fast as Amazon and do it at a cost that makes sense for the business. Because you can get very, very fast, but it may cost you more than it's worth, more than you can afford.
So let's just zero in on a couple of things here as we kind of wind this down. Let's talk about what you're doing today with Lagniappe and some of the things, the benefits that you're delivering to your customers. And if I could perhaps like throw one out to you there, when you were here visiting our offices a couple of weeks ago, Bryan, one of the things we were talking about is I was kind of intrigued when you say, my objective is to help companies be great. Coming, like I said, from Walmart, where I find it kind of interesting. Greatness is just taken for granted. That's what you're expected to do. Deliver products to the customers at the lowest possible cost, et cetera. But from your perspective, walk me through some of the capabilities, how you can help companies, in fact, achieve the kind of greatness that you were talking about.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I think it is important that as an advisor, as a consultant, that I'm able to deliver for customers. And one of the things that I bring to the table is a very, very deep operational background. So as I talk about these senior leadership roles that I've had over the last many years, I started off at the bottom rungs of the operational ladder and sort of worked my way up from an operations standpoint. So one of the things I bring is a broad operational perspective in both transportation and distribution. To go along with that operational background, there's this global perspective that that I can bring to my customers over the last many years working with Walmart. And really that global perspective spans across not only supply chain, but also retail and really all functions of business I've been involved in or exposed to over with my time here at Walmart. The team brings an assessment process. So I love walking the floors of distribution centers or transportation operations and talking to people. And through that process, we're able to take this proprietary assessment and find things that can quickly deliver results, whether that be cost savings, waste identification, or whether it be things that need to be improved or things that could be upgraded because they have been in place for a long, long time and they're costing you. They're costing you money. There's one thing, Mike, that we didn't talk about that I wanted to bring about, and that is the cost of turnover, right? The cost of hiring people.
Wait, turnover at distribution centers, does that happen?
A little bit, and I'm unfortunately familiar with some of the levers you can pull to address turnover. And really, when we talked about simplification earlier, that whole mindset around simplifying our interfaces with our employees, with our associates, and making their jobs simpler was really to abate turnover. And if you have turnover, to get those folks that come into your business, get them up to speed faster. Because a hidden cost of turnover certainly is training. And at Walmart, we had a very, very long training cycle. One of the things we were trying to reduce, again, at Walmart or any operation, Mike, there are things that can be improved. It was this whole mindset, this whole thing in our DNA that everything we do can be improved over time. And, Mike, I know what great looks like. I've been at Walmart a long time. I've seen very, very solid operations. I've seen operations go from great to world class, and I can help companies do that. I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like. I know the challenges and the roadblocks that companies face, and the ones that Walmart faced, quite frankly, over time.
So, Bryan, I have to ask this because, like I said before, I know there's going to be that person out there and go, come on, Walmart is 1 billion times bigger than I am. Walmart's so big. What can a guy with Walmart, teach this little company, about supply chain and transportation. And what I'm getting at specifically, Bryan, is the stuff that you did at Walmart, is that something that's consistent scale-wise, whether you're big or small? I guess what I'm really asking is, are there some universal principles that companies can look at to basically achieve that greatness in their transportation and supply chain area?
You bet. Listen, there are no magic wands, not even at Walmart. These are real world solutions. And, one of the things that I've done over time, Mike, is learn from great mentors, learn about waste elimination, learn about continuous improvement. And unfortunately, if you don't have the eye for it, it's hard to kind of take an organization to the next level. And so what I've been trained to do is identify waste, identify items or processes that can be improved. And really that's what I'll offer the customers.
And I just want to kind of perhaps amplify that, because based on my experience, what I've often observed is, in fact, that there are these universal principles. And so, as I like to mention to people, when you were talking about OTIF, a lot of people said, oh, that's Walmart because that, they can do that because they're Walmart, rather. And one of the things I then asked him, I said, well, let's forget about Walmart. What kind of supplier management program do you have in place? And the reality of it is that the implementation of a supplier management program isn't predicated on the size and scale of your operation. Right. It's predicated on the way you choose to do business. Is that something that you've seen also, other practices and principles in the distribution centers and the supply chains?
Absolutely. I'll give you a real world example. So a Walmart distribution center, let's say a general merchandise building or a grocery building for that matter, is engineered to handle so much volume a day. So let's use simple math. 100 loads a day. A building is engineered, designed to unload, put away. So let's say that if you're not managing your suppliers and one day you get 50 loads, then the people you have in that building is underutilized, right? You have to send people home early. They don't get all their hours. But then the next day, again, you're engineered for 100 loads a day. You get 150 inbound to unload. Then you have overtime, you have inefficiencies on the dock, you have congestion, you have all these things that drive productivity down. And that's really what a supplier management program like OTIF is trying to do. It is trying to maximize the entire supply chain with the end goal, Mike, of having product on the shelf to drive sales.
And so, Bryan, let me just, some people are going to hear that engineered to handle, 100. My facility is only designed to handle 20. And so my point is, okay, one day you get 10, the next day you get 30. And so one of the things I want to remind people of, we've had the privilege and pleasure of working with the Walmarts of the world and some other very large, progressive, innovative customers of ours. And one of the things that I am always fascinated by is that, it isn't an issue of size. One of the reasons I think lean has been so popular and, so effective is because there are some principles that apply regardless of the size of the operation. So, Bryan, what we're going to do is we'll provide people with some contact information to get in touch with you. Is there anything else that you'd like to add that perhaps we didn't cover as we close out the interview here?
Mike, listen, I appreciate the time. And I know if your organizations that this video is talking to, whether they be transportation or distribution, want to get some insight on world-class operations, I can offer them some assistance.
Great. And Bryan, one of the things we also like to do at TranzAct, just as I close this out, we've got something that you mentioned, an assessment. We have our rapid assessment process, and that's proven to be a really highly effective tool to help companies basically take a holistic view. Within TranzAct here, we call it managing from the inside out. And that's something that, perhaps in a future on the record, we can get you to talk about, because, our point that we really highlight for a lot of folks is that when it comes to managing transportation, they're externally focused. They think that if I can if I can control my carriers, I can control my cost. And one of the things we like to really highlight for them is that basically controlling the carriers is just one part of the equation. The real levers within your organization come from looking at these decisions I make that affect how I consume freight. And so the savings, and I think you and I had mentioned also within the DC operations and our rapid assessment, you mentioned a roadmap. We like to say, if you're here, point A is I'm good, point B is great. Here's the bridge to get from good to great. And that's what greatness looks like, and that's how you achieve it. So look forward to continuing the dialogue with you, Bryan. And I really want to say thank you for your time and good luck to land you up there.
Thanks so much, Mike.